Oh, Misty, we can't hear you.
Muted. I think I did this last time. I'm almost positive I did this last time too. Okay, I'm unmuted now. So now everybody can
welcome,
hear me.
Misty. And
anyway, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I am not Jimmy Dore, as you can see. I am Misty Winston, and I'll be your guest host for today. I appreciate you guys having me. Jimmy is out and about. He is in Texas currently, traveling and making people laugh on tour. So here are the dates that he has coming up. Today, actually, he's in New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Then he's going back to Texas. He's got a show tomorrow in Houston and in Dallas. I'm going to try to get my sister to go to the one in Dallas. And then dates coming up in April, May, and June that you can see there. All tickets and all the information and all that stuff is at jimmydore.com. So go check that out. And I know I say this every time that I guest host, but I love a Jimmy Dore show. It is the best thing in the world to be in a room full of like-minded people, because it can be a little isolating out here, I think, at least for me. Maybe you have a different experience, but in Podunk, Ohio, which is where I am, I feel sometimes like I'm losing my mind. Okay. We have a genuinely packed show today. Oh, and no Kurt. I apologize. No Kurt. And actually, it's funny, when I heard he wasn't going to be able to be here, I was in the car with my kids. So my oldest is autistic. She's almost 18 and she's autistic. And just a little context, I'm a power lifter. and I was driving with my kids, and I heard Kurt wasn't going to be able to make it tonight. And I said, "Oh man, I really hope I can carry the show by myself." And she looked very confused for a second, and she was like, "Is it heavy?" I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, you're strong, Mom." And I'm like, No, that's not what that means. So that was cute though. But Kurt's not going to be here, so you're stuck with just me. We tried to get Kit Cabello to come on. I don't know if he has gotten back to us though, but we do have a jam-packed show. I'm very excited. I have a couple really great guests coming up for you later. But let's jump off with our first story for today. And this is an interesting one. So I'm sure some of you have seen this. This was just recently announced, I think yesterday or the day before it was announced officially. The U.S. Army increased the maximum enlistment age from 35 to 42. And that'll start on April 20th. 420, by the way. And while the minimum age will stay 18 or 17 with permission, this applies to National Guard, also applies to National Guard and Reserves. And they're also going to allow, on 420, this becomes available, people with one marijuana possession charge to join without extra approval. So I guess previously people were able to join if they had a marijuana conviction, or I think even some harsher stuff, depending on circumstances, but you had to go through a whole bunch of other red tape and all that stuff. So that now, if you have just one possession charge for weed, you can join without extra approval. Yay, fun, guys. Everybody go join the military. No, don't do that. So here's a summary of change. Now, this is there's been multiple different changes, but a lot of them is just silly things that really aren't that significant. But the two big ones is obviously the one highlighted here, increases the maximum enlistment age up to and including age 42 for non-prior service applicants. I'm safe. I'm 44, so I don't have to worry about it. And then these ones here increases the maximum. I guess it's the 42, and then eliminates requirement of a waiver for a single conviction or of possession of marijuana or a single conviction of possession of drug paraphernalia. So if you've been busted with weed and or paraphernalia just once, you can still join the military. And this is just interesting timing. I think we've all seen the way that the military has been in recent years scrambling, as they should, to get recruitment numbers up. They've been dropping significantly over the last couple of years. I think they may have rebounded a little bit last year, but I think the 2 years prior to that, recruiting had really dropped off, and they are getting desperate. And that's obviously why we're seeing that this is taking place now. So this is from Military Times. This just goes into a little bit more detail. In a sweeping change to its enlistment regulations, the Army has raised the maximum age for eligible recruits to 42, the service announced. Changes highlighted in the memo, which was distributed this week and will go into effect in April, also include the removal of previous enlistment obstacles for recruits who have a single marijuana or drug paraphernalia conviction. The announcement comes as the Army continues efforts to widen its recruiting pool after falling short of its regular Army enlistment goals in 2022 and 2023. Before rebounding in 2024. The upper limit of the Army's previous allowable enlistment age was 35. So it's a 7-year jump, but waivers were sometimes granted for older enlistees. The Air Force and Navy allow recruits over 40, while the Marine Corps caps enlistment at 28, but allows hopefuls who are 29 or over to request waivers. The average age of Army recruits is currently higher than previous years, with new recruits entering the service with an average enlistment age of 22.7, according to Army data. And I think that that's super interesting. I'm surprised by that a little bit, because I think that they typically depend quite a bit on, no offense to young people, but young, dumb kids who, don't have a prefrontal cortex yet and can't really determine what's a good decision and what's a bad decision. And that's typically what they've always depended on when recruiting people. That's why they go to high schools. That's why the enlistment age is 18, but you can't drink till you're 21. So I was surprised to hear that the average age of enlistment is now higher. It could be a little bit to do with poverty draft, that people are struggling so significantly that they don't feel like they have any other options. And so they go join the military, which is terribly sad. But I was pretty surprised by that. That figure, which reflects the average age of active duty and reserve recruits so far in fiscal year 2026, may reflect a shift from recent decades, when the average age was 21.7 in the 2000s and 21.1 in the 2010s, according to data provided by Madison Bonzo, the Army Recruiting Division's Chief of Media Relations. Army leaders say the change reflects how recruiters are increasingly seeking to reach a wider range of potential new service members. And another change that opens up the possibility of Army service to a wider pool, the Army announced it will no longer require a waiver for one conviction of possession of marijuana or one conviction of possession of drug paraphernalia. The change comes as more states legalize cannabis, even though its use remains prohibited for service members. Applicants with more serious drug-related offenses will still need waivers. So if you have, something a little bit harder on your record, you still have to go through. And I would be willing to bet that they would almost certainly still accept you. Because they are genuinely desperate. And I thought that this was hilarious. So this is my pal, Steve Poikonen. Some of you may be familiar with him. He hosts his own show. He's on multiple different shows. He was part of Action for Assange when I was in Action for Assange, the activist group, and then also the show. We co-hosted that together. And I thought that this is hilarious. So he said, waiving cannabis convictions on 420 is clever, but waiving them to convince dupes to die for Israel on Hitler's birthday, which is also 420, is peak 2026. And I thought that that was bang on. That is a crazy coincidence. The fact that it is 420, obviously a significant weed holiday, if that's your jam. But it is also Hitler's birthday, and convincing people on 420 to go die for Israel on Hitler's birthday is certainly peak 2026. But this, I think, is even more important. So they've expanded somebody posted that Barron and Kai should exist, Trump kids. And I just decided to point out that, hey, if they're going to expand to 42, you can also take these two, because Tiffany Trump is 32 years old and Eric Trump is 42 years old. So they are now eligible to join the army. And I think that they should do so. I think that if any politician who is voting in favor of war, I think their kids should have to be the first ones to sign up to go, because I think we would see a significant drop in wars, because nobody wants their kid to go off to a faraway country to die so that rich people can get richer. Not even rich people. I don't even think, well, I know some of them might not like their kids, but I think that we would see a significant drop in their willingness to go to war if that was the case. So, and I'm just gonna put this up here. I'm just gonna say, you should go follow this crew. You should share this information around, just in case you know somebody who happens to be in the military currently. I'm just going to put that up there and leave that up there for you so that you have information, access to that information. Yeah, it's wild, right? And I think that, watching them panic like this, I think Jimmy's talked about this recently, that Trump seems to be panicking a little bit. I think that he was, I don't think he's all that bright. And I think he's definitely surrounded by a bunch of people who know exactly how to stroke his ego. And I think that he really was bamboozled into thinking that he was going to come out of this one looking like the good guy, the strong guy. And it's definitely not the case. This is not going to turn out well for the United States, I don't think. And I think we're at a point right now that it's almost impossible to back out without looking like an idiot. But I think that we're going to see more of this kind of panicking from the military and recruiting and all of that stuff. Nobody wants to join the military. And in fact, the page that I have up here right now, when we attacked, they saw a significant, they were dealing with phone calls just constantly, just a barrage of phone calls of people in the military currently who are now desperate to get out, as you should be. I can believe it, but it's beyond frustrating to me that we're doing this again. Here we go again. So there you have it. If you can now enter into the military if you have a conviction for weed or paraphernalia or up to age 42. I don't know if they're going to bring the draft back, but it feels like we're on that path for sure, which is really terrifying. I don't know if you can sign up as a conscientious objector early. Maybe you can, but if you can, maybe everybody should. Because I don't want to go die for Israel. I don't think any of us do, or we shouldn't have to. So there you go. The military raising the age to 42. Yeah, it's wild that we're doing this again. And I think that I will say, I think that it's good that, because we have seen such a significant objection to this. And I think that we've seen that in recent years. We saw it with Israel and Gaza. I think Israel-Gaza really turned things around for a lot of people. I think a lot of seeing a genocide be live streamed, I think, was a reality check for a lot of people. And I think that that's why we're seeing such a significant objection to. I think more people are just paying attention. It's kind of hard to not pay attention. But I definitely think that it feels like, at least to me, and maybe that's just me being uncharacteristically hopeful, because normally I'm not. But it feels like there is a pretty significant shift in the air. Like you can kind of feel that people are genuinely fed up, so over it, and across the board. It's not just one party or the other. I feel like everybody has just really had it. So, okay, we're going to move on to the next story. And again, thank you for tuning in. This is the Jimmy Dore Show. I am your guest host for today, Misty Winston. Jimmy Dore is out and about on the prowl, making people laugh. So if you are in or around any of these locations, make sure you go to jimmydore.com, get you some tickets. It's a fantastic show. And hopefully he'll be coming back to Ohio soon, because I would love to go to another Jimmy Dore show. Okay, next, this is also in the same vein, but this was just recently leaked, and I think it's crazy that this is the only place I've seen it reported. And it's a massive story, in my opinion, and it's significant that we're not hearing anything about this in mainstream press. It's really difficult for me to imagine that anybody could, as you can't ignore this one. So IDF chief warns cabinet, the military is on the verge of collapse, and nobody should be surprised by this. We've seen, I think, military suicides in Israel have spiked over 40% since 2023. Not surprising. When you're sent out to slaughter innocent women and children, it can't be great for your mental health. So, but this, I think, it goes hand in hand with our military suffering or struggling to recruit, struggling to get people involved. And Israel has like mandated service. You have to serve, but they're not doing well. They're not really having a great time currently. And this says in a leaked cabinet recording, IDF chief of staff, Ayal Zamir, probably butchered that, I apologize, warns that the Israeli military is nearing collapse, citing the exhaustion of reserve forces and the failure to pass a Haredi draft law. Zamir told ministers the IDF may soon be unfit for routine missions. So 2.5 years into the contentious conflict and nearly a month into Operation Roaring Lion, still makes me angry, IDF chief of staff Ayal Zamir has issued a dire warning to the prime minister and cabinet ministers. Without immediate legislative action, the IDF will no longer be fit for its missions. According to a report by Mariah Asraf on Channel 13 News, the chief of staff delivered a blunt assessment during a closed-door cabinet meeting yesterday. Quote, I am raising 10 red flags, Zamir reportedly told the ministers. The IDF immediately needs a draft law, a reserve service law, and a law to extend mandatory service. The reserves will not be able to hold out under these dramatic circumstances, end quote, which it's of your own doing, but okay. The chief of staff further warned that the window of effectiveness is closing fast. Quote, it won't be long before the IDF is no longer fit for even routine security missions, end quote. The warning comes amid a deepening crisis regarding the unequal distribution of the military burden. The Haredi draft since October 7th of 2023, large-scale ultra-Orthodox enlistment has failed to materialize. Despite political promises of a new draft law to bring in thousands of Haredi recruits, the legislation remains stalled due to political infighting. Mandatory service, the current laws that shorten mandatory service to 32 months remain unchanged, leaving the standing army understaffed during a multi-front war. Again, of their own doing. I mean, they're attacking multiple countries on a daily basis. The reserve burden, reservists are currently serving their 4th or 5th rounds of active duty in 2.5 years. Despite promises to limit reserve duty to 1 month per year, soldiers called up for Operation Kalavi are entering their 2nd month of service with no end in sight. So I'm sure that they're getting pretty tired of that. I think Netanyahu was already in political turmoil, and this is certainly not going to help at all. As of this afternoon, neither the IDF nor the Prime Minister's office has issued an official response to the report. However, the Chief of Staff's comments highlight the extreme pressure on the People's Army, so ridiculous, as it manages high-intensity maneuvering in Lebanon alongside ongoing threats from the east. And it's fascinating to me. This is J-Feed, so it's like a kind of right-leaning Israeli news outlet. So it's just always interesting to me the way that they're framing this. High intensity maneuvering in Lebanon. You mean bombing civilian infrastructure and killing innocent people? because that's what you're doing, and alongside ongoing threats from the East. Stop bombing, people, and maybe there will not be as many threats. That's all I have to say about that. So I think that it's very telling that this is happening in both countries right now, both the United States and in Israel. Both militaries seem to be struggling in terms of recruiting and in terms of morale and all of that stuff, which is not surprising given what's going on right now. But it's interesting to see how both countries are genuinely struggling on this front. And it's also going to be interesting to see how Netanyahu handles it. I think that there's been rumblings of him being in very real political trouble for a long time. I mean, he was under investigation right before, conveniently, October 7th. And he's been in political trouble and it's not for the reasons that you would think. He's not in trouble because people don't like the genocide. They don't like the way that he's handling the genocide. And I will always and forever point to Abby Martin's work in Israel. She was just on another podcast recently and was talking about those older videos that I'm mentioning now. I think they're like, I don't know, 6 or 7, maybe even older. I don't know. They're a few years old for sure. But she went to Jerusalem and walked around the streets and interviewing Israeli citizens. And it is staggering the way that they speak about Palestinians. I mean, and this is long before October 7th. So people that like to pretend like history started on October 7th and that this is all happening in a vacuum, just go watch those videos. It's fascinating on one hand, because I'm always interested in like why people think the way that they do. And I don't understand that mentality in any way. So it is fascinating, but it's also just genuinely disgusting. So I would highly recommend people go watch that. That is what we're dealing with in Israel. It is true. Genocidal maniacs, I'm not even sure is strong enough. They are, it is pretty vile language that they use to speak about Palestinians. And again, this is years before October 7th. And so those are the types of people that we're dealing with in Israel. But the IDF is now struggling, and they may not be. And I'm also wondering, and it makes me wonder if this is also not just a ploy, so that Israel can use this as an excuse to draw American troops into their shenanigans, because then American politicians will be able to point to this and be like, look, they're struggling. Like, we have to go help them. They're our ally. We have to send troops to go help the Israelis. They're our strongest ally in the region. We have to send our troops. So I'm wondering if maybe we're also not being set up with a little bit of smoke and mirrors here, where they're going to pretend like the military. Not that I doubt that the military is struggling. I think there's no question that the Israeli military is struggling. Again, suicides are up just from what they're reporting. Who knows if those numbers are accurate, but from what I've seen, it's at least 40% up from before 2023. So that's pretty significant. So I have no doubt that they're struggling. But I do also wonder if they're just playing us and using us as an excuse so that American politicians have something to point to show that, we have to send American troops. Obviously, we can't just leave them there all by themselves. So, yeah, there you have it. The Israeli military is struggling. This was just leaked. I still can't believe it's not really being reported. I didn't even see it. Jimmy sent it to me. And that's the only place that I've seen it. So super interesting that both the United States military and Israeli military are struggling. So, okay, I think we're going to take a quick break and hit an ad real quick, and then we'll be back.
Hey, you already know why people are moving to crypto, but here's the problem. Most wallets still plug into the same system we were trying to escape in the first place. That's why Rumble built Rumble Wallet. It's a self-custodial wallet that lives inside an ecosystem that actually defends free speech and financial freedom. No bank holding your balance. Not even Rumble can touch your funds. This is your money on your keys, on your terms. If you're already using Bitcoin or stable coins, Rumble Wallet gives you even more power. Direct, fast tipping and support for creators right on Rumble without waiting weeks for payouts or dealing with random account holds. On-chain payments in assets like Bitcoins, Tether Gold, and USAT. So you can move value globally without asking anyone for permission. Most wallets stop at storage. Rumble Wallet connects your money to a marketplace of ideas that refuses to cave to censorship. So if you're serious about sovereignty, financial and digital, this is where you level up. Go to wallet.rumble.com or search Rumble Wallet in your app store. Download it, back up your recovery phrase, and move your money where it belongs, in your hands. Rumble Wallet is a technology provider only and not a custodial service. See terms at wallet.rumble.com.
Okay, I just added myself to the stage. This feels like I have lots of power. Hello, everybody. Are you in Albuquerque? Are you going to Jimmy's show tonight? Jimmy and Steph and Chris Keene, you going to go to that show? Houston, Texas tomorrow, Dallas the next day, and then they'll be back in studio on Monday. Thank you, Misty, for being here. I have just a few chats, everyone, and then we'll get back to Misty and all these great stories, great depressing stories. Vienticus Prime, always great to open with Vienticus Prime chat. Everything's a scam, everything's a lie, everything's hypocrisy, and so you don't comply. Thank you, Vienticus. We got double Vienticus. I left the military nearly 2 decades ago, and since then, I keep having nightmares about being pulled back in with my injuries. So what they're doing is literally nightmare fuel. I'm so sorry to hear that, Vienticus. My brother went through some of that. He was in the military a long time ago, and he went through some of that too. So I feel for everybody. We also had one from BR Hegseth, who for the past year, wasn't it Hegseth who said for the past year that the U.S. Army standards have gotten too low and that they need to be raised? Yeah, very interesting. Wasn't there one more? There was one more. Where was it? Here we go. DC Snipe Hunt said, I have more severe convictions on my record and am mentally ill, but they'd probably take me. Probably so. All right. Thanks, everybody. And back to Misty.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody for tuning in. I know, listen, I get it. I feel bad for even hosting because I get annoyed when Jimmy's not here. So here I am taking over for Jimmy when I get annoyed when other people do it. I just am a creature of habit. I like the same stuff. I don't like a lot of change or anything like that. So, but other people are hosting shows that I'm not used to or accustomed to. It's a little frustrating. So I get it. But thanks for letting me hang out. It's always good to be here. Again, if you are in Albuquerque tonight and you want to go see JD and the crew, go. Run, don't walk, get tickets. And then of course, Houston and Dallas tomorrow and Sunday. So a great weekend in Texas. If you want to go get some laughs in, go do that. Okay. So we do have a ton of stories to get through, and I'm going to apologize before. And again, if you're just tuning in, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I am your guest host for today, Misty Winston, and I'm going to apologize before I start this story because I'm going to subject you to listening to Ben Shapiro. And I know that it annoys me. So I apologize for subjecting you to that today. But it kind of goes in line with what we've been talking about today. So Ben Shapiro, after telling his audience for months that bombing Iran wouldn't lead to a wider war, and then claiming the war was just going to be a quick bombing campaign, is now telling Americans to prepare for a long war. Quote, there is no way to extricate ourselves from this situation right now, end quote. Americans only got tired of Vietnam after 50,000 troops died, he said. I mean, come on. Quote, our military members are heroes because they're willing to sacrifice their lives for a greater good, a future world where energy will become cheap again because the Strait of Hormuz will be free again. So Ben Shapiro is a lying liar that lies. Nobody is surprised by that. And this is just another example of that. So again, I am going to subject you to Ben Shapiro. So let me grab the first video here. Let me make sure I'm getting the right one. Okay, here we go.
If you look historically, the American people actually have some patience. Our shortest wars were longer than the current conflict. The Persian Gulf War involved 43 days of active operations. The Kosovo NATO air war lasted for 78 days. Even deposing Noriega in Panama in the late 80s, that lasted for 6 weeks. And also, Americans are not dumb. We don't believe that if you're involved in military activity, you're not going to lose anybody. Because, again, if necessary military activity can only be pursued at zero cost, there's no use in having a military. Literally, the point of a military is to do hard and dangerous things. That's why our military members are heroes. That's because they're willing to undertake that sacrifice for a greater good. Now, Iran, for its part, seems to be counting on this view of Americans that have been shared by pretty much all of our enemies at one time or another, that were weaklings, that were incapable of mobilizing for victory. Hitler famously thought that America was decadent and unstable. In one private conversation, according to sort of Hitler's notes, reportedly he said, quote, "I don't see much future for the Americans. It's a decayed country. They have the racial problem, the problem of social inequalities. Everything about the behavior of American society reveals that it's half Judaized and the other half nigrified." And this is Hitler talking. How can one expect a state like that to hold together? And during Vietnam, the Viet Cong counted on the idea that Americans would get tired, that Americans would get bored. And after a while, they were right. Americans did get tired. After a while, they were right. Americans did want out. We should know that there were 50,000 American dead by that point. In Iraq and Afghanistan, too, our enemies thought, okay, they can just outlast the Americans. But here is the point. To outlast Americans, typically, requires not months, not weeks, years. Reality is that there is no way to extricate ourselves from this situation right now. There's no way to extricate ourselves from this situation by simply running away. That does not leave Iran in control of the Strait of Hormuz, which means $100 to $150 barrels of oil from here to forever. That is a point that was made by Larry Fink over at BlackRock. Not a Fink fan, but he's right about this.
If there's a cessation of war, and yet Iran remains a threat to trade, a threat to the Straits of Hormuz, then I would argue that we could have years of, above $100, closer to $150 oil.
What happens to the global economy if that happens? How do we see
We'll have global recession.
Okay, again, he's right about this. That's the point, is that it's not as though if things ended today, things would be better a month or 2 months or 4 months from now with Iran still in control of the Strait of Hormuz. There is no way out but through. And here's the thing. Once we get to the end of this, if the Iranian regime falls, energy will become cheap again because the Strait of Hormuz will be free again. Not only that, you'll actually have American energy companies working with a friendly Iranian government to radically increase oil production. And because markets are forward-looking, the price of energy will then go down.
I mean, could this guy be more full of it? It's crazy. Okay, hold on. The absolute nonchalance in which they discuss this Larry Fink, it's going to cause a global recession. No big deal, because he's isolated from it. It's not going to affect him at all in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's not going to affect Ben Shapiro at all in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's going to affect the American people. And the idea that he's like, 50,000 dead Americans, and then maybe people will get bored. Is he serious right now? Like, I think people are pissed, and there's only been, a couple 7, 8, 10 Americans, I think, have maybe died so far. And people are already pissed. We are a war-weary country. I'm so over it. I'm sure you guys are too. I'm so over it. I'm so tired of this nonsense. I'm so sick of tax dollars. Y'all, they're out here. I have the story later if we have time. They got robots. They have robots that they want to take over for teachers, and they can bomb countries all day long and kill a bunch of innocent civilians. And like, there's a pothole in the road outside my house that has been there for like 2.5 years. It still hasn't been fixed yet. Like, it makes me so angry. People don't have health care. People can't afford their rent. People have to work 2 or 3 jobs, and can't afford to live. They can't afford groceries. And we're out here talking about, Ben Shapiro's out here talking about how it's no big deal that there's going to be a global recession. It's no big deal. It's no big deal, guys. The only way out is through. No, the only way out was to never get in the first place. That's the only way out. And people are sick of it. And I think people see through this. People see that this is not about anything other than being Israel's bitch. And it's so, and I should have put it in the slideshow, but it's so fascinating to me that not that long ago, Donald Trump was tweeting about how Marco Rubio was the Adelson's bitch. He was Israel's bitch. And now look at Trump. Isn't he cute? He is Israel's biggest bitch. Maybe not. Ben Shapiro's given him a run for his money, but it's just crazy to me that we are in this situation yet again, that we are starting another unwinnable war. Don't get it twisted. This is not a winnable war. None of them are. But as I'll point out later, I could just play it now, I guess.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
And that's it. And obviously that clip's from 2011. He was talking about the war in Afghanistan, but it applies here. It absolutely applies here. The goal is not a winnable war. It's just an endless war, because this is how they just continue to make the rich people richer, deplete resources, the population. I mean, it's just, I'm really just done with all of this. And I'm tired of Ben Shapiro and others like him just straight up lying. Here's the next clip. He's got more to add to it. I guess I should. So in this one, I think I went too far. Shapiro goes on to advocate once again for the U.S. to invade Kharg Island and dismisses the threat of American forces suffering, quote, a large number of casualties as overblown. Of course he does. Of course he does. So here he is.
According to CNN, quote, Iran has been laying traps and moving additional military personnel and air defenses to Kharg Island in recent weeks in preparation for a possible U.S. operation to take control of the island, according to multiple people familiar with U.S. intelligence reporting on the issue. But U.S. officials and military experts say there would be significant risks involved in a ground operation, including a large number of U.S. casualties. The island has layered defenses. The Iranians have moved additional shoulder-fired surface-to-air guided missile systems known as man-pads there, as well as anti-personnel and anti-armor mines around the island and on the shoreline, where troops would make an amphibious landing. Now, again, I would assume that our military planners have thought of this. We are constantly hearing about the magical defense capabilities of the Iranians, and so far, the magical defense capabilities of the Iranians appear to be putting their bodies in the way of American bombs. It's not working amazing.
I mean, he's just so blasé about it. But listen, sending troops onto the island, and I think Jimmy just talked about this on Wednesday's show, maybe. They're going to be sitting ducks. Like, even if you happen, I think people are underestimating Iran, and I don't know why, but they are not going to just lay down and take this. They are not just going to, they're not currently just laying down and taking it. So this is not going to be something where, you're just going to send in a couple hundred Marines to take over an island and then they're going to roll over. That's not going to be what happens here. And it's not going to be just Iran. And this is opening up so much possibility for broader regional conflict. And this could get really bad for a lot of people. And that's what it bothers me, that they're so just completely nonchalant about the risks, and that he's calling it overblown, that just give me a break. It is disgusting to me, because again, he's insulated from this. This is never going to impact Ben Shapiro's life in any way. It's not going to. Larry Fink is going to be completely unbothered. It's going to be our sons and daughters, our neighbors, the kids in our neighborhood who are going to go off to fight in this unwinnable war and die for no reason for Israel. And none of these people are going to be impacted, but they're just they're completely fine with sending our sons and daughters off to die. They're fine with that. You are cattle to them. And it just been made abundantly clear time and time again. COVID was huge for that. I think a lot of people woke up to the fact that they do not care. They will use you. They will experiment on you. They don't care. And so I think a lot of people are seeing it, but the idea that he's just out here being so brazen in his, I mean, it just blows my mind. And I promise this is the last clip of Ben Shapiro. So in this one, Chris says that he praises Trump for launching the Iran war against the will of the American people. Of course he does. Of course he does. So let's hear this gem
of it. I was talking to young voters yesterday, and she said, Trump is doing this for you, which is totally true. By the way, this is an act of political courage. I know sometimes it happens. It's so funny. We were having this conversation on Friendly Fire the other day with Michael Knowles and Andrew Klavan and Chris Rufo. We were talking about the political fallout, theoretically, from what's going on in Iran. It could hurt Trump politically. And I said, like, guys, maybe Trump is doing a thing because he thinks it's the right thing to do, and that is a good thing. You elect leaders to do the right thing, even when the public isn't necessarily in favor of it.
Does anybody think that Trump is doing the right thing because he knows it's the right thing to do? Of course not. That is absurd on every level. I don't think Donald Trump has ever done the right thing because it's the right thing. Donald Trump does what is beneficial to Donald Trump. Always has, always will. It's crazy to think otherwise. This is not an act. Starting an unwinnable war is an act of political courage, guys. No, it's absolutely not. It's ridiculous, especially to do it on behalf of another country. And again, selling it to the American people under lies and false pretenses, just the American way. This is the way, this is how we do things. And it just, and this is, remember the story we covered earlier where the Army extended its maximum recruitment age to 42? Guess how old Ben Shapiro is? He is 42. I guarantee you. I just realized he shares a birthday with my husband. Not years wise. But he should sign up. He should go enlist in the military. He's not going to. His kids are not going to enlist in the military at any point in their life. Like, it's none of these people care. It's not their sons and daughters. It's not them putting their lives on the line. They're fine with sending you to die for Israel. And it just, I mean, it's all of this just disgusts me. I cannot. I've gotten to the point where I just can't even listen to them anymore. Like, the sound of his voice makes me angry. The sound of Donald Trump's voice makes me angry. Pete Hegseth, all of them. And as somebody in the super chat pointed out, Hegseth is the one who was talking about how the military needs to have higher standards. And now we're, adjusting age ranges and criminal convictions and all of that stuff. They have no actual principles. They have no morals. They have no values. They are political opportunists, and they do not they're psychopaths. We are ruled by pedophilic psychopaths. And I don't know how we change that, friends. I really don't. Somebody asked earlier today on Twitter, like, what's the non-violent way to dismantle the state? I mean, I would love to know the answer to that question, because they certainly don't represent us. And we are now in another unwinnable war. We're going to be sending off American soldiers to die for Israel. And I don't know how to stop it. I mean, it seems like nothing that we do impacts them in any way. They do not care if we protest. I mean, if you guys want to go join a No Kings protest, there's more happening this weekend. It's going to do fuck all to do anything. But you can go out there if you want, I guess. It's just, it's really depressing where we're at right now. And I don't know how to fight back against these insane people. So this is some of the stuff that Ben Shapiro has said about the war previously, because this is what he's saying right now, what he just said in those clips is a departure from what he has said previously. So this is just some of the stuff. By the way, I love the eyes at the top of this. It's a little creepy, but if you've been following coverage of the Trump administration's military action against Iran, you've probably noticed something. A lot of people are determined to convince you that the United States is losing. I don't think that that's really a question. I mean, I don't think that that's a question in any way. There is no way that we can win this. There just isn't. But Ben says that they're wrong. Even worse, many of them know they're wrong. Critics across the political spectrum, from Democrats to elements of the so-called horseshoe right, are pushing narratives that paint the conflict as a disaster in the making. It's already a disaster. Not in the making, it's a disaster. The first claim is that the United States has stumbled into another interminable Middle East war, one destined to drag on for years and possibly escalate to catastrophic levels. This is absurd. At the time of this writing, the conflict is less than 2 weeks old, 12 days. That's not 12 years as in Vietnam, or even 12 months as in the Spanish-American War. So he's just minimizing here. Wars unfold over time, and no one should pretend to know exactly how long any conflict will last. But the notion that the United States is already trapped in a generational quagmire after less than 2 weeks of fighting is less analysis than panic. This isn't, but what he's failing to understand here is that this is not just 2 weeks. This is something that has genuinely been going on for decades. And it's really just kind of been like a push and pull back and forth in terms of severity and how bad it's gotten. But this has been going on for a very long time. And it's certainly escalated now to a point that we certainly haven't seen it at this level for a while. But pretending as if this is 2 weeks is demonstrably false. That's what that is. A second claim insists that Iran is holding strong, that the regime is weathering the assault and even gaining the upper hand. I would say that that's fair. Again, reality tells a different story. Iran's military capabilities have been battered. Its missile and drone infrastructure has been heavily targeted. Its naval assets have reportedly suffered severe losses. Leadership turmoil inside the regime only compounds the problem. And here's my question about this, because how does he know? Because we were told that Iran's nuclear capability was, what was the word? Was it obliterated? I think it was obliterated. I may be wrong. That may be the wrong word that he used, but it was something equally dramatic. Iran's nuclear capability was obliterated. That's what he said, right? That's what he said. And then it changes. And then suddenly, no, we have to go. It's all lies. It's all bullshit. We're not getting the full story. None of us know the actual story of what's genuinely going on. And so Ben pretending, and obviously he probably has contacts within government and all of that stuff, but I don't believe a word any of them say at this point. None of us should. So there is the idea that we should just believe that their military capabilities have been battered and missile and drone infrastructure has been heavily targeted. That may very well be true. But we don't know. And the idea that they're losing, I think, is questionable at best. So reports suggest that the death of long-time Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has triggered a chaotic succession struggle. I can't talk, y'all. Even his presumed heir, I don't know how to say that. I'm not even gonna try. Khamenei appears to lack both political support and personal legitimacy within the system. In other words, the Iranian regime is not projecting strength. It's scrambling to maintain control. I don't see that. The final warning is economic. Iran, critics say, will simply shut down the Strait of Hormuz, sending global oil prices skyrocketing and bringing the American economy to its knees. For a brief moment earlier this week, markets reacted to that fear. Oil prices jumped sharply amid speculation that the strait could be disrupted. But the panic faded almost as quickly as it began. Within days, crude prices have fallen back below 90 a barrel. I just paid over $4 in small town Ohio, a gallon to fill up my tank yesterday. So we're not seeing that at the pump yet, and it's only going to continue to get worse. Markets, unlike pundits, respond to reality, and the reality is that Iran faces enormous consequences if it attempts to choke off one of the world's most vital shipping lanes. President Donald Trump has made that point unmistakably clear. In a statement posted online, he warned that any Iranian attempt to block the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz would trigger an overwhelming American response. But again, how does that help anything? And all it does is ensure that there's going to be further conflict. And that doesn't help any of us. It helps no one. It helps Israel. That's the only benefactor here. The message was aimed not only at Tehran, but also at Beijing and other major energy consumers. The United States intends to keep global energy flowing, and anyone who interferes will pay a heavy price. I don't think people are scared of us. Ben Shapiro has made multiple statements on X.com. So this is his previous positions when he needed a different narrative. So Ben Shapiro has made multiple statements on X.com and in syndicated columns asserting that the Iran war would be brief. In a discussion with Joe Rogan, referenced in search results from March 11th, 2026. So just 16 days ago, Shapiro explicitly stated, quote, "We are less than 2 weeks into the war, and it's not going to last probably more than another 2 weeks." That's vastly different from what he just said in that video. We got 50,000 dead, guys. You can't get bored yet. The idea that he used the term bored is crazy. He further argued against the idea of endless war, telling Rogan, quote, "They're not, because wars have a beginning and they have an end." Okay, that's the point. And I guess you could argue that certain segments of this. This is really just one continuous war. All they do is shift the target so that they can justify continuing it. They just move. It's Syria and it's Iraq and it's Iran and they just move the targets around. Sometimes it's Somalia, but we are just constantly at war, and that's the point. And I think that he's just being obtuse there. Earlier in the conflict on February 12th, 2026, Shapiro claimed on X.com that the U.S. could, quote, knock out Iranians on Hormuz in 3 minutes flat, implying a very short duration for the initial strike phase. Additionally, in a column published March 12th, 2026, so again, 13 days ago, he dismissed the claim that the U.S. was entering a quagmire, noting that the, quote, the conflict is less than 2 weeks old. That's not 12 years as in Vietnam, or even 12 months. 12 days is too long. 12 hours is too long. Like, we shouldn't be there. We shouldn't be there. However, by March 27th, 2026, Shapiro's stance appeared to shift as the war continued. He was criticized for, quote, shifting goalposts, something he is very good at, after previously assuring his audience that a bombing campaign would not lead to a longer ground war. On that date, he told Americans to, quote, buckle up for the long run, a change from his earlier predictions of a swift conclusion. So it's always pay attention to the people who do this. Because it's very, nobody is surprised that Ben Shapiro is a paid propagandist and he is a narrative manager, and his entire job is to lie to people to push an agenda. Everybody knows that. He's very good at it, to his credit. But it's very obvious. To point them out, to like be able to find these people within 2 weeks, this dude is completely shifting his opinion on something as serious as this. And I'm fine, like, if people take in new information, evaluate things, change their minds, all of that good stuff. Like, I think that that's a great thing. And I think that very often when people change their positions on issues, we're too like harsh on them. When people come around to certain things. And I'm guilty of that too, by the way. Like, I'm very, like, people who still buy into Bernie Sanders, I have a very hard time remaining patient with those types of people. People who still think Barack Obama is a good guy, I have a very hard time remaining patient with those types of people. But when people come around on issues, it's very hard, I think, for us to not like, and I do the I told you so thing, or I can't believe you didn't see this. And I definitely do that. And I shouldn't. We should be welcoming of people wanting to change their minds. But that's not what this is. This is Ben Shapiro being a narrative manager. This is Ben Shapiro shifting his opinion, just really just shifting the rhetoric to serve an agenda. He probably gets told what to say or how to say it or how to approach it, and that's what he does. And to change your opinion on something so dramatically over the course of like 12 to 14 days is wild, especially something as significant as this, especially given that he does brag about having government sources. So you shouldn't, none of this should be new information to you. But I think everybody who knows anything about what's going on there knows that this is unwinnable. And for them to be so dismissive of lives lost, and to pretend as if it's just like they're dying for the greater good is wild to me. But there you have it. It's what they do. Okay, so we have a guest coming on here pretty soon. But I do have a quick story that I want to talk about regarding Vault 7 from WikiLeaks. So again, if you're just tuning in, thanks for joining us here at the Jimmy Dore Show. I am guest host for today, Misty Winston. And we're going to dive in now to something that I think, and I just wanted to touch on this because I feel like we are being bombarded right now with a bunch of propaganda. And some of that propaganda is regarding Iran hacking us, hacking our elections, rigging our elections. It's Russiagate, but with Iran. So we get a whole new flavor of bullshit. So I wanted to bring this up because, and I try to bring this up as often as possible, because I feel like Vault 7, if you're unfamiliar with that, was the largest CIA leak in history. It was published by WikiLeaks in March of 2017. So it is the anniversary of the release as well. But I think it was one of the more underlooked, underrated, I guess, WikiLeaks releases. I feel like it didn't get near enough attention, and it's a lot of stuff. So I highly recommend that you go and check out the entirety of the releases. There's so much information in there. regarding the CIA. This is where they showed that they can turn your smart TV, and like when you think it's off, it's not off, and it's listening to you. And this is, I mean, there's just so much information within Vault 7 that I highly recommend that people go check out, read through the whole thing for yourself. But I really wanted to touch on a very specific part of Vault 7, and that's the marble framework. So the reason why I wanted to bring it up was because this came across my feed. Obviously, I'm in Ohio, so I follow Frank LaRose. I follow most of our elected officials in Ohio just to keep an eye on them, because it's crazy in Ohio right now. We're going to talk about that later. But this video came across my feed, and I just wanted to play this for you, and then I'll talk about why I think that we need to remember and really look at Vault 7. So let me grab the right one. Here we go.
Election Security Directive of his administration, Secretary of State Frank LaRose is reinforcing both physical and cybersecurity protections for Ohio's elections. This comes amid a rise in cyber threats against the U.S. from Iranian-linked hackers in the wake of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. These groups have been targeting critical infrastructure and local governments, including county boards of elections.
Like any office, the Board of Elections has a lot of things that are connected. Their website, their email, the system that you use to register to vote online. Anything that's connected to the internet, of course, we've got to have the right security posture in place. So one of the things that we really emphasized in this is those incident response plans.
The latest directive requires all counties to review their compliance with the standards and protocols previously set by the LaRose administration, participate in a cybersecurity audit, and report their findings by August 31st. To help with this, every county board of elections will receive a $10,000 grant. The state dollars can be used in a variety of ways.
So there you have it. They're worried about Iran hacking into our... Why don't we just do paper ballots then? How about that? How about that? No, we can't do paper ballots. It's too much common sense. So that's why I wanted to bring this up, because the rhetoric has already started. The narrative has already started to get pushed that is a significant threat, that Iran's going to hack our election. And listen, I'm not saying that they're not trying to. I would be willing to bet that they are. Multiple countries probably are. I think that kind of espionage and all of that stuff happens, and nobody does it more than we do. So I'm not saying Iran is not capable. I'm not saying that they're not trying. None of that. I think that they're absolutely capable. I think they're almost certainly trying. I think, as I said, multiple countries are probably trying to meddle in our stuff on various different levels, as we are to other countries. However, I wanted to just point out, because I feel like this is significant. And again, I feel like the Vault 7 releases were very underlooked. And this is a big part of why. So I'm going to play a quick video from WikiLeaks. And this is just basically like a brief rundown. It doesn't get anywhere near into all of the details. But this video just gives you kind of like a brief summary about what Vault 7 was. And then we'll talk about Marble Framework.
WikiLeaks released thousands of documents and files that it says expose hacking tools used by the Central Intelligence Agency. The leaks purportedly show that the CIA is capable of hacking smartphones, computer operating systems, automobiles, messenger applications, and even internet-connected televisions. The series of files, dubbed Vault 7, consists of 8,761 documents and files allegedly from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence. Though many of the tools detailed in the documents are the kind of things you'd expect from an intelligence agency, they provide an unprecedented blueprint for how the CIA could hack individuals they're spying on. Here's how they could work. Say CIA operatives are investigating a suspect in France we'll call John. According to the leaks, CIA hackers operate out of the US consulate in Frankfurt, Germany, using it as a base to cover Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. From the confines of the consulate, the CIA can track John's activities around France. The CIA purportedly has a few techniques it can use to hack into versions of Apple's iOS, the mobile operating system used in iPhones. The WikiLeaks documents detail malware, allegedly used as a hacking tool, that appears to remain on an iPhone even after it has been rebooted, a technique known as persistence. To gain access to phones and other devices, the CIA would exploit zero-day bugs, previously unknown flaws in the operating system's code, that they would collect and store. If the CIA hacks John's phone, it can bypass the encryption of messenger apps like WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, and Confide that John uses, and collect voice, audio, and messages before the applications encrypt John's text. To track his movements, the agency can activate the camera and microphone on John's phone without him knowing and retrieve his geolocation. Even if his cell phone's powered off, the documents describe how the CIA can hack other internet-connected devices to monitor John's activity. Working with British intelligence, the CIA developed an attack that can place Samsung smart TVs in a fake off mode. So while the TV appears turned off, in reality, it's functioning as a bug and recording his conversations in the living room. The CIA also apparently has the capability to target John's wireless internet router to connect to his infected computer or access files. American CIA hackers can also allegedly leave false breadcrumbs to mask the operation's fingerprints and make it appear that it was carried out by another country. That can be done by inserting malware components from a known Chinese, Russian, or Iranian hacking operation, for example, into a US one. There's evidence the CIA has been collecting malware components known to work in overseas cyber attack operations. The CIA declined to comment, quote, on the authenticity or content of purported intelligence documents, end quote. But if authenticated, the trove would be one of the biggest breaches in the spy agency's history. A spokesman for the White House also declined to comment. The extent of the impact on U.S. security remains to be seen. Apple, Microsoft, and Alphabet Inc.'s Google have all said in statements that they've already addressed some of the vulnerabilities, though their investigations were continuing.
Okay, so that's a brief rundown of the entirety of, well, not the entirety, a good bit of Vault 7. There's a lot of pieces to this. I mean, there's Grasshopper, there's Hive, there's Weeping Angel, there's Archimedes, there's Dark Matter, there's the Marble Framework. There's a lot of different things that were exposed in Vault 7. So again, highly recommend, if you haven't already, to go read it. And I also want to point out, as I often try to, or usually always, try to point out, my favorite thing about Vault 7 is it was released in March of 2017. So if you know anything about the Assange timeline, Julian Assange was years into illegal and arbitrary detention in the Ecuadorian embassy at this time. He was already public enemy number one of the United States of America. And he released Vault 7, which is the largest CIA leak in history. So the balls that it takes to do that. And this is why Mike Pompeo then spent his first speech in April of 2017, just a month after the releases, his first speech as CIA director. If you go back and watch it, it is like Assange focused. It's when he decides to call him, what did he call him? A hostile non-state. Oh, I wish I could remember the full phrase that he used. Anyways, he basically dedicated his entire first speech as CIA director under the Trump administration to going after Julian Assange, because this was very embarrassing for the CIA, and they did not like it very much at all. And I really think that this was probably the camel that broke the straw's back. Sweet cheese balls. The straw that broke the camel's back in the Assange stuff. I think up until then, maybe they were fine with just letting him hang out in the Ecuadorian embassy. And I think after this, they were done. And they were gonna, after this is when Donald Trump had the plots developed to either assassinate or kidnap him. This is when they started spying on him in the Ecuadorian embassy, including all of his visitors. People would come to visit him and they would take all of their electronic devices and clone them. They would copy all of the paperwork that they had. They stole a diaper from his eldest son, trying to determine whether or not the baby was in fact actually Julian Assange's baby. All of that stuff happened after this. So I really think that this was the straw that broke the camel's back for sure. So this is why I wanted to talk about this today, because as I said, we're starting to get bombarded with the narrative, the idea, the rhetoric that Iran's going to hack our elections. Or remember Rachel Maddow breathlessly talking about what would we do if Russia turned off the power in the winter? Like we're going to start to get that all over again, only it's going to be Iran now. So I wanted to bring this up because Marble Framework exposed something that I think is super interesting. And again, I'm not saying that Iran isn't capable or isn't trying to do to hack the United States election system. And in fact, I think that there was just a recent hacking of like a medical supply someplace that an Iranian hacking group supposedly took credit for. So I'm not saying that they can't or that they won't or that they're not trying to. Definitely not. What I am saying is that you need to be incredibly skeptical, because what Marble Framework exposed is essentially that they can hack into a system and then leave footprints that make it look like it's somebody else, another country. So here's what WikiLeaks had to say about Marble Framework. So today, March 31st, 2017, WikiLeaks releases Vault 7 Marble 676 source code files for 676 source code files for the CIA's secret anti-forensic Marble Framework. Marble is used to hamper forensic investigators and antivirus companies from attributing viruses, Trojans, and hacking attacks to the CIA. So basically it just makes it harder for people to see that it is the CIA who did the thing. Marble does this by hiding or obfuscating text fragments used in CIA malware from visual inspection. This is a digital equivalent of a specialized CIA tool in place to place covers over the English language text on US produced weapon systems before giving them to insurgents secretly backed by the CIA. Marble forms part of the CIA's anti-forensics approach and the CIA's core library of malware code. It is, quote, designed to allow for flexible and easy to use obfuscation, as string obfuscation algorithms, especially those that are unique, are often used to link malware to a specific developer or development shop. The Marble source code also includes a deobfuscator to reverse CIA text obfuscation. I know it's a little crazy. Combined with the revealed obfuscation techniques, a pattern or signature emerges, which can assist forensic investigators attribute previous hacking attacks and viruses to the CIA. Marble was in use at the CIA during 2016, Reach 1.0 in 2015. The source code shows that Marble has test examples, not just in English, but also in Chinese, Russian, Korean, Arabic, and Farsi. This would permit a forensic attribution double game, for example, by pretending that the spoken language of the malware creator was not American English, but, for example, Chinese, and then showing attempts to conceal the use of Chinese, drawing forensic investigators even more strongly to the wrong conclusion. But there are other possibilities, such as hiding fake error messages. The Marble framework is used for obfuscation only and does not contain any vulnerabilities or exploits by itself. So that's why I wanted to just point this out, because I feel like this kind of stuff is going to get even more significant in coming days. They're going to start, especially as the election approaches, they're going to start really bombarding us with the fear mongering and all of that stuff for various different reasons, not least of which is that they'll use that fear mongering to manufacture consent for further involvement in the ground game and all of that stuff. So, and also, if you know me, you know, I will never pass up an opportunity to bring up WikiLeaks releases and the things that they exposed. I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. I feel like WikiLeaks is a wealth of information. And I feel like every time a story breaks, you can go back and look through WikiLeaks and find information that makes things make sense, that you can connect dots with. And this is just another one of those examples. And I think that, again, the rhetoric on this is going to amp up a lot in the coming days. Frank LaRose is, and again, why aren't we just doing paper ballots? I don't know why Americans are cool with the way that our elections are run, with proprietary software that we can't audit, and the whole voter ID thing. And it's just wild to me that in the United States of America, in the year of our Lord, 2026, that people are cool with the way that our elections are run. I think the Jimmy Carter Center has, I think we consistently rank dead last amongst Western democracies for election integrity. That's crazy. We're the United States. We pretend to be so cool. We're the best, right? Like fireworks, eagles, all the things. We're the best country on earth. And we can't even run a legitimate election. That's very intentional, though. But again, we're going to start getting bombarded with even more of this stuff. We're going to start hearing more fear mongering. Rachel Maddow is going to do more breathless segments about the potential for Iran to turn off your grandma's electric in the wintertime. She's going to freeze to death. And we're going to get all of that stuff. And I am, again, not saying that that's not a possible, like Iran's not capable of doing that stuff. And I don't think anybody is, naive. And well, some people are. Nobody in Jimmy Dore's audience is naive enough to think that that's not happening on a regular basis. Multiple different countries doing it to each other. Nobody does it more than we do. Of course it's possible. However, I think that people need to maintain their sense of skepticism. I say it all the time. How many times does your government get to do this stuff before your sense of skepticism kicks in? Your sense of skepticism, anything with this shit should immediately be on. Like, my jumping off point is they're lying, and then I go from there. So and I think most people here are the same way, but please go check out Vault 7. I did reach out to Gabriel Shipton, by the way. I was trying to get an update on how Julian's doing. Nobody has really heard much from him. He did that. He attended a protest for Palestine a while ago. I don't even remember when that was. It was a while ago, but nobody's really heard from him since. I did reach out to Gabriel. I have not heard back yet. It was kind of a last minute thing. But I just wanted to see, get an update on how he's doing. But I was unable to get that. But he has been free for a while now. So hopefully he's just chilling. So yeah, there you have it. Okay. I think we're going to take, our guest is running just a tiny bit behind. So I think we're going to take a quick break and do an ad, and then we'll be back with Derrick Broze.
Speaking of gold has hit its biggest year since 1979. It's up 67%, 53 new all-time highs, and then it blew past $5,500 in January. Right now, it's pulled back, and every major bank on Wall Street, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, UBS, is telling their clients that this is the buy window before gold hits $6,000, $7,000, and $8,000. Meanwhile, silver is sitting on a structural supply deficit for the 6th straight year, with solar panels and electric vehicles consuming more of it every single day. The central banks of China, Poland, Brazil, and India are buying gold at record prices. The Fed just froze rate cuts. The Iran war is spiking oil, and you can still call Monetary Gold today and get your complimentary gold and silver guide. The #1 requested guide in America for more than 25 years, absolutely free. Call 800-476-7790 or go to jimmylovesgold.com. That's jimmylovesgold.com or 800-476-7790.
All right, we're back. Again, thank you so much for tuning into the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm not Jimmy Dore. I am Misty Winston. I'm the guest host for today. So Jimmy is on tour right now. He has shows tonight in Albuquerque. If you're there, I think tickets are still available. So go check that out. Tomorrow, Houston, Sunday, Dallas. And then you can see there's some dates for April, May, and June as well. Tickets and all the information for that stuff is at jimmydore.com. So go check that out. See if he's coming to a city near you. He's adding dates all the time. So make sure you check back regularly if he isn't coming to a city close to you right now. He will. New dates are always being added on. So again, thanks for tuning in. I don't know if I said I am Misty Winston, your guest host for today. I'm very excited. Now we're going to bring in our guest, Derrick Broze. He's been on the show multiple times. I've had him on. I think Jimmy has also had him on. But Derrick Broze is an author, journalist, documentary filmmaker, and activist whose work focuses on practical steps individuals can take to reduce their dependence on technocracy and the role of community in achieving long-term independence. His new memoir is A Man of My Word: How I Overcame Addiction, Depression, and Mental and Physical Prison. And his documentary series is titled Pyramid of Power. The final installment of that was actually just released recently. And he's also joining us today from CPAC, which we're going to talk a little bit about. I'm very excited about that. Derrick, thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I apologize for the delay. I got a little tied up at CPAC.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. I can ramble. I always, and especially it was a WikiLeaks thing. I can ramble WikiLeaks all day. So no big deal. So just so everybody knows, this is Derrick's Twitter page. If you want to go follow him, it's at @DBrozeLiveFree. Go follow him. Criminally underfollowed, in my opinion. And this is also his book that I just mentioned, A Man of My Word. It is available now. There's a link there on his Twitter page that you can get that. And then this is the Conscious Resistance Network. This is his website. And this is where you can find the documentary that I mentioned, The Pyramid of Power. It is it was at 17 total parts. And they're like an hour to an hour and a half ish long, each part. And it's fascinating. All of the stuff is fascinating. And I'm so glad that you did it. So for people who aren't familiar with you, your work, the documentary, just give us like a brief overview of what Pyramid of Power is.
Yeah, thanks for that. So the Pyramid of Power, the main website is thepyramidofpower.net. As you said, it's 17-part documentary series. I started working on this in summer of 2020. It was basically my effort to try to answer the question of who or what runs the world, and do so in a true crime fashion, investigative journalism fashion, not from a conspiracy lens. I don't consider this to be a conspiracy documentary, although some might dismiss it as such, because every single thing that I talk about in every single episode is listed in my transcript, documented, sourced, and referenced there for people to follow up. And so I started with the most basic, which is just the education system, big education. Then we look at establishment media, big tech. And essentially the idea is that as we look at these pieces of the pyramid, of pieces of the puzzle, it gets progressively deeper. And we show how these institutions are connected, either through the same individuals popping up, the same institutions popping up over and over. And so over the last 5 years, I've been releasing them in seasons of 4 episodes at a time, getting to the recent conclusion. The conclusion, as you said, it's a 2-part conclusion. 17 is split into 2 volumes because it's actually 3 hours in total. But the rest of the episodes, I tried to really make it bingeable for the bingeable Netflix generation. So every episode aims to be 30 minutes or less. There's a few that are 40-ish. And it, as I said, it's documented, it's sourced. And instead of trying to recreate the wheel with a lot of this, since there's already great books and documentaries out there, I combined my own original research as well as references to existing material. And then every episode also ends with solutions like, hey, here's some ideas on opting out or getting out of the education system or the banking system, or how to avoid, the poison in the food and stuff like that. And so it's the biggest work I've ever done. And I'm really excited to be sharing it here on Jimmy's show because, the conclusion had just come out. And I looked at, in the conclusion, all the different theories out there about which group people believe run the world. Obviously, the Zionist or the Jews is very popular right now. I looked into that claim and sort of what can we prove, what can we debunk, look at claims of the Jesuits, the Freemasons, all these kind of different groups, the Venetian Black nobility, some groups that are less known and others that are more familiar. And as I said, looking at what can we actually historically prove, what is more speculative, and then, sort of draw conclusions. And the final episode, it was really powerful for me because I got to interview G. Edward Griffin, James Corbett, a lot of really powerful researchers, Professor Riddens, Catherine Austin Fitz, a lot of other great people who all have their perspectives on who or what they think is at the top and what they think the solution is. So I just released that, and we also just released the book version of it. The book version actually has even more material than what's in the documentary series because there's just so much material that I had to cut out to make it not 5 hours long. And so the book version is now available. The final episode, all the episodes are available for free. Again, the website is thepyramidofpower.net.
Yeah, and it is seriously, and it is jam-packed with information. Like the latest one, it is just a constant barrage of information. It is fascinating. And what you just said, how you got to interview all of these different people. What I love about this documentary series is that you do talk to people who have differing opinions. You talk to people who, some people think that there is nobody in charge and that it's just a bunch of kind of groups that have just kind of all learned to work together. So, it is, you really do get the full gamut of the spectrum of thought here. And that's what and also you mentioned that there are solutions. I know that I've told you this before. I love that there's solutions at the end of every episode. In fact, I think I just mentioned it earlier on the show. Somebody just posted on Twitter, how do we non-violently take down the state? And I always bring up the advice that you give to people is opt out when you can. And I think that's and that's talk a little bit about that, because that's generally the solutions that you give at the end of the different episodes is how we can kind of opt out of the technocracy. And I think a lot of people right now are desperate for ways that they can do that. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I think thank you for that. I think that's honestly the most important part. Obviously, many people watching Jimmy's shows and those who will see this will kind of feel like, yeah, we know this. We're well researched. We understand, the different pieces of the puzzle. The series was definitely meant for people who are maybe just waking up. It's also for people who are veteran researchers. I think you'll find a lot to chew on in this. But of course, what really matters is, okay, now that we know what's going on, now that we know that there's people trying to manipulate our reality, what are we actually going to do about it? And as you said, I focus on building parallel systems, opting out. It's what I call exit and build, exiting from what I consider to be slavery systems or soon to be slavery systems, and building parallel systems where possible. Because I think it's becoming more and more clear to people, especially people who may have fallen for the whole Trump deception and thought that, okay, this coalition Trump built is going to save us from the so-called deep state. More and more people are recognizing politics isn't going to save us. It's not the answer. Voting alone isn't going to do anything. And I don't think violent revolution is the answer either. So then, what are you left with? A lot of people would just say apathy, be black-pilled, throw your hands up, give up, YOLO, who cares? I don't think that's the solution either. I think the solution is for us to vote every day with our actions. What exit and build is kind of one way I explain to people is it's like the idea of voting with your dollar, but instead of just talking economically, you're talking about voting with your actions in all areas of your life. So, for example, if you're concerned with the push towards companies requiring facial recognition or facial recognition of the airports, so these kind of systems, stop participating in those systems, stop supporting those companies, stop giving them your money, your time, your energy, and support better companies or better people who are working on those alternative solutions, and just apply that mindset to all areas, whether it comes to the food systems, whether it comes to the banking system, and trying to pursue alternatives. And of course, this is not an easy path. I never claim that it's, here's 5 steps and we win and everything's done. I think that's the lie we've been sold, that all you have to do is press a button every 2 to 4 years, vote for somebody else, outsource your own power, and then everything's going to be solved. That's a lie we've been told. In fact, I think the real fight for liberation is time consuming. It does take maybe changing your habits, changing, your relationships, your life path. It might take some financial investment. Definitely is going to take some time and energy. But I think that's the real way that we get towards creating the better world that I think we all know is possible. And I just want to mention as well, on the Pyramid of Power website at thepyramidofpower.net, we have a solutions tab, which is basically just a highlight and links to all the solutions that I mentioned at the end of every single episode, including the final one. So if you're ever just wanting to, besides watch the episodes, if you're just looking for some ideas on solutions for the banking system or solutions for the corrupted food system, go to thepyramidofpower.net, check out the solutions tab, watch the episodes, or just go to the solutions itself and see what ideas and where that leads you. Again, I don't claim to have all the solutions. I don't think any of us do, but I do think it's time for us to stop wasting our time, energy, money, et cetera, and giving it away to these politicians who don't really care about us and who aren't trying to build a better world.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you're having that conversation, because it is fascinating to me. And I realize that everybody's kind of on their own path and everybody's dealing with this stuff in their own way. And we all have to start somewhere. We all have that kind of moment where we realize that everything we've ever been told is a lie. And that's a really hard pill to swallow. It's hard to wrap your head around, and then it's hard to know where to go from there. So again, as I said earlier, like I try to be patient with people, but it's crazy to me that it's 2026 and we're still pretending like voting is the solution. It's wild beyond my ability to comprehend.
If a pedophile ring has been exposed,
yes.
if overthrowing governments and controlling the media and MK Ultra and all these kinds of things, again, not to say to be black-pilled, but if you see all those things and you're awake to those things, the idea that then November and vote them out, it's just ridiculous. Like, we have to kind of be willing to, and some people call this a black pill. I actually think it's a white pill. It's like, you kind of wake up and say, you know what, I need to grow up. I need to acknowledge I'm the one that has to take care of myself. Me and you, because I'll have people say this to me sometimes. You just think everybody's bad. You just, who are the good guys? And it's like, well, it's not QAnon. It's not Donald Trump. It's you, it's me. It's the regular working class people who have to take charge of our own lives and say, okay, well, what are we going to do for ourselves? So it should be a black pill. It should be a sense of, sure, be, overwhelmed for a moment, because it is overwhelming, but then also step up and reclaim your power and say, like, all right, well, then if nobody else is coming, then I guess I have to do this for myself.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of like, I'm not really a black pillar, but I have like a black pillar attitude. I'm just very cynical by nature. But you can do both.
I fight it every day.
Yeah, you have to. And so I will say that I'm like kind of in between. Like, I have those times where I'm just like, YOLO, whatever, I don't care. But like, I still do. And you don't have to do everything at once. Like, just go and take your money out of a bank and put it in a credit union. Like, that's a super easy thing that everybody can do. Start like a small garden. I am whatever the opposite of green thumb is. That's me. I don't have it. I will kill a plant. So I got to figure it out. I think I'm going to start with potatoes anyways. But
go volunteer at a community garden. If you can, this is one thing that I suggest in the series. I mean, because just in terms of talking about food, because there are a lot of people who say that, look, I have a black thumb, brown thumb, whatever.
I'm
And I
so
get
mad.
it. And I'm not saying we all need to be farmers either or anything like that, but I think we all understand, especially during COVID times, where certain places start saying, if you don't have this medical, intervention, you can't come in, you can't get access to this. And also there's increasing concerns about the cost of food prices because of the Iran war. These are all good reasons to be less and less dependent on the mainstream wasteful, destructive food production system. So even if you could just say, you know what, I'm going to go give 2 hours of my weekend to the local community garden, even if I don't know what the heck I'm doing, you will learn from other people who know what they're doing. And most of the time, those places will give you free produce to take home. Little things like that. If you did that just 2 hours a weekend for 1 month, well, then all of a sudden you got 8 hours of new experience, new knowledge. And if you think about like that, as far as like we were saying, start where you are, start simple. Don't be overwhelmed by the big picture. With time, you start to move yourself in this direction. And I also want to make it clear too, that nothing I'm saying is things that I haven't done myself. Everything that I promote are things that I'm actually doing in my life. And I have a book called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State that people can download for free at my website at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. That goes much, much deeper into how to apply this exit and build idea. But one thing is just to remember, it starts with your mindset, right? If we're already like, we're screwed, there's no way this can happen, which again, it's hard not to fall into that sometimes, then don't be surprised if you fail. But if you exit and build from unhealthy mindsets and limiting beliefs as your foundation, then it's a lot easier to say, okay, well, I'm going to start where I'm at. I'm going to withdraw my money from the big bank and put it in the credit union. I'm going to go to the local community garden, whatever steps that are most appealing to you, you will make progress.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, I may suck at plants, but I am surrounded by farmers. And I think that you and I have talked about this before. I have made very good friends with my farmer neighbors.
There you go.
So we have a good relationship. And that's another thing that you can do too, is just like building community, because we're all going to need each other.
Absolutely.
Because it's not going to get any better. So before, I want to move on to your book, but before we do, I did want to ask you, I mean, you spent 5 years making this documentary series, and it was a lot of research. Was there anything that surprised you that you learned? Did you change your own perspective throughout making the documentary series? Did you kind of land where you think you would land? Like, what was the most surprising thing to you over the course of the 5 years making this?
Great question. So one of the things that I really sought out to do when I started making the documentary is to revisit all of my old research. You know, what many of us, when we start to wake up, you consume a lot of material, especially in the age of the internet, right? We're like watching YouTube documentaries, reading all kinds of stuff. And many of those things, at least in my experience, when you're in that kind of waking up, almost panic stage, you consume a lot of things. And with time, I found with revisiting certain things, like, for example, Alex Jones was one of the people who woke me up in 2009. I don't really trust Alex Jones these days. And looking back on some of the things I learned from him, I'm like, okay, there was some kernels of truth in there, but it was also exaggerated in this way, or it wasn't exactly what he claimed. And so it gave me a chance to revisit a lot of the things that I first consumed, and then to look at them with a more critical eye. So I would say in that sense, it did surprise me that, I mean, I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist. Again, from outsider perspective would probably label me that way. But I think there are a lot of people in the conspiracy space who believe anything without evidence. I think that's absolutely true. It's one mainstream criticism that is true. That doesn't mean there aren't conspiracies, of course. My whole documentary documents real world conspiracies, conspiracy reality, conspiracy fact. But I do think there are a lot of people who are so sure that they know it's the Jews, it's the Jesuits. When you actually get further into the details of what we can prove, there's a lot of gray area in there. And that doesn't mean that these groups aren't there, but that was a big thing for me. Not that it wasn't something I already believed, but it was just kind of reaffirming of like, you know what, I'm okay with saying we can't 100% prove. And I'll let people watch the documentary to see what conclusions I draw. But I do think that was a big thing for me, is recognizing, all right, there's a lot of people who are so self-assured, even in the mainstream world, but definitely in the conspiracy alternative research community. And when you kind of dig in and you press them and say, well, what's your source on that? Can you cite that? What's the reference you have? A lot of times people don't have one. It's just a belief that they've come to hold, and they're not holding mainstream beliefs, so they're awake or aware. But if we're just going to hold things that we can't prove, then how are we so different from the mainstream people? So that was a big thing, is just kind of coming to an awareness of like, I don't think we're ever truly going to know the truth about all these different areas, and I'm okay with that.
You have to be. And I think that for some people that's difficult. I think people like to that control, like they want to feel like they have control over their world. You don't. None of us do. And we're never going to, and we're never going to have all of the information. I think that's abundantly clear. So but I think that it's almost comforting in a way, because so much of it is out of your control. And like you said earlier, or like you said in the documentary, if this kind of stuff, like if researching this kind of stuff really bombs you out, like in a really hard way, take a step back. Like I think some people just get, like you said, it's overwhelming the amount of information that we are subjected to and that we have access to. And I think some people just get really far in the weeds and it can be really damaging. So, I mean, just try to like have a healthy balance, I think, in what you're researching, I think is what I'm trying to say. So, okay. I do want to talk about your book too, though, which also was recently just published. So it's called A Man of My Word. And this is about like your personal journey. I think it's great that you wrote this because I feel like a lot of people who were in your situation. Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about why you chose to write the book and what it goes through.
Yeah, sure. So again, the main website for this is amanofmyword.com. People can find out more about it. But this is kind of a prequel to my current life. For anybody who does know my activism or journalism, I've been doing this for the last 16 years. This really has nothing to do with it. The end of the book sort of touches on the beginnings of my activism, but it's really, you could say, a kind of a prequel to all the things that I am doing today. And the reason I wanted to share this story, not only because this November 2025, a couple months ago, was the 20th anniversary of my arrest. I got arrested at 20 years old. I had been addicted to crystal meth and other drugs and alcohol for about two years right after high school and into college, and ended up getting sucked into a whole kind of underground drug world and selling drugs, and ended up living in the crack meth house and went to prison and kind of it was in that place, that horrible institution, where I pulled myself together and started working on, my own issues, and got into kind of meditation and doing my own sort of shadow work, as they say, and doing some healing. And then eventually that did lead to me getting out, starting to question the drug war, waking up, getting into activism and journalism. The reason I wanted to write the book, though, is because every time I have shared even bits and pieces of this story over the years, as I've done interviews or I've given presentations, whenever I do mention, I went through this drug addiction, mental health struggles, self-harm, I was cutting myself, I was doing all kinds of, stuff when I was younger, and I made it through. Every time I share that, somebody will come up to me and say, my daughter is dealing with addiction, or my son, or my mother, my father. And I just start to realize that I think even in our so-called awake, aware, truther, freedom, whatever you want to say, communities, that addiction is just as prevalent as it is in the mainstream world. We might want to think that we are better than that, or, we're not like the normies. We've gotten past all these different things because we're healthier mentally, physically, whatever. But it is very prominent, and it's something that I think it's also kind of spoken about in hushed tones, even in these alternative spaces. And so I just wanted to share my story in the hopes that anybody who is currently going through this or has family or friends might realize that there is hope on the other side. And so the book covers my life from 2003 pretty much till 2011, like right after high school, going into college, getting sucked into this whole drug world, then getting arrested, going in and out of prisons and jails and institutions for 3.5 years, and then basically getting out and starting to wake up. That's the time period that the book covers. And it talks about my experience growing up in a family with drug addicts. My father was in and out of prison my entire life, and he unfortunately died of a drug overdose in 2018. He was never able to get out of his own struggles. And both sides of my family, my mom's side of the family and my father's side of the family, both had addiction problems and mental health struggles and suicide. And this is something that was very prominent in my own life. And so when I found myself going down that path, I decided I needed to turn my life around. And so the book kind of covers that. It is my story, warts and all the ugly, dark, disturbing things that I went through and ways I treated myself and other people. I did not shy away from just being real and honest about it, because I think that's where, real change happens. So I released this book at the end of 2025 and the Pyramid of Power book right after that. So it was a busy 2025, but it feels important now that it's out. And just one other thing on it, that for anybody who might be hearing this, who has experience in this area, my hope with the book, now that it's out, in the coming years, I'm going to be speaking more and more about addiction, and of course how it relates to the drug war and the U.S. Drug policy and even foreign policy, with Trump bombing Venezuelan boats, claiming it's going to stop the drug war. I want this to become more important to my work in the coming years, and I want to talk to people and work and collaborate with people who do have expertise in this areas. I'd like to start some sort of foundation, not necessarily a government, nonprofit or NGO or anything, but some sort of foundation that could help people with resources. Because the other part of my story is that I personally don't find the 12-step addiction as a disease model to be very helpful, telling somebody that they're diseased for the rest of their life and this is just something you have to deal with. I know that the 12-step model and that particular mindset has helped people, and that's great. It didn't help me. That was not what helped me. And so I'm starting to collaborate with different people, those who have grown up working in families, those who've worked with addicts themselves, those who've been addicts themselves. And I don't know what it's going to turn into, but I'm trying to just, reach out to other people who want to see what sort of model we can come up with. There's some people who've reached out and said they're like working on addiction recovery using natural law or, just all kinds of different so-called alternative approaches. And I'm really interested to see where that goes. So yeah, my book is out, my story is out there, and people have been really receptive to it. Like I said, if anybody out there has dealt with addiction or has somebody currently dealing with addiction, I think the book might be useful for them. And you can find it on my Twitter page pinned there or at amanofmyword.com.
Yeah, I think sadly, most people know at least somebody, one person who has dealt with addiction of some kind, which is, it's sad, but that's the reality and again, some of it is intentional and by design. Like this is U.S. drug policy and all of that stuff that can't be overlooked. So definitely go and check out the book. Again, you can find it right there on his Twitter page. If you go, it's pinned on his Twitter page. So it's definitely a good read. So also, I know you're at CPAC. First, let me ask you, is CPAC, is it busy? Is there a lot of people there? Because people have been posting pictures that it's very empty.
It seems a lot. So this is my first year, I will say, but compared to what I've seen in videos in the past years, like you got to remember, like last year after Trump won, there was a big celebratory thing. So Elon's here with a golden chainsaw, and Trump's here. Trump has skipped it so far. I mean, there's one more day tomorrow, and who knows if he'll surprise show up. There's been whispers I keep hearing from people that JD Vance might show up, but I will say in the main room there were definitely a lot of empty chairs. There was a few talks where it seemed to be more full. But by and large, there definitely seems to be a different energy. There's definitely a lot of talk about Iran, of course. There's a lot of talk about the MAGA division and all the stuff we've been witnessing online, and people trying to say, ignore that. We need to stand strong behind Trump. But it's been interesting so far. There's all sorts of the MAGA celebrities here and people supporting Zionism and what you would expect at a CPAC type event.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that you've had a chance. I didn't get a chance to check your recent, I don't know if you've uploaded any other videos, but I do know that you got to confront Bovino.
In the last couple of days, newly confirmed DHS Secretary Mullen has said,
oh, hold on. Is it coming up?
Statements he made after the shooting death of Alex Preddy. Do you regret any statements or actions you took around those shootings in Minnesota?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Every single statement was the truth. I regret no statements. And we move forward here. We don't capitulate to folks that hate America. Do
you think you got enough support from the Trump administration following those days?
President Trump is the best president I've ever worked for. A few swamp creatures in that administration that probably need to go. But President Trump, fantastic. He gives us a lot of support. Great job to President Trump. He's a patriot. A few swamp creatures there that need to.
Final question: what do you say to Americans who worry about ICE and Border Patrol profiling or mistakenly or otherwise stopping Americans and detaining them, whether temporarily or otherwise?
Show me an instance where that's happened.
There's plenty on social media.
I'm not saying who.
There's plenty of individuals on social media. I don't have names in front of me.
Exactly.
There's current court cases going though right now.
We won every single court case in the Supreme Court and everywhere else.
He's such a turd. Ugh.
I can't stand that guy.
Me neither.
He was there today. I thought about following up with him. I might if he's there tomorrow. But yeah, so for those who don't know or don't recognize that jackboot thug there, that is Greg Bovino, who is now officially retired from Border Patrol. He was the top commander in Border Patrol in Minnesota, both when Renee Good and Alex Preddy were shot. And he, like plenty of other officials, said all kinds of nasty things about them immediately in the days following the shootings. And then the Trump administration seemingly kind of backing off a little bit. They sent him to California, got rid of him for a little bit, and now he's officially retiring as of this week from the administration. And so, yeah, I saw him there. I figured it was worth kind of putting him on the spot because I, like many people out there, whatever your thoughts on border policy and how it should be handled, I definitely don't think most Americans want the streets to be militarized and want people to be profiled or to be kidnapped. When I was on my way here to do this interview from CPAC just a moment ago. Literally, I just caught an Uber and I was talking to my Uber driver, who is an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, who said he's got his green card, he's legal and all this stuff. But he was telling me that he fears going out sometimes, that because of seeing people being harassed, even people who have appointments and are waiting for, the immigration judges and stuff like that. We've seen the Trump administration still targeting people. So, I figured if this guy is going to be here, I have to ask this question. So I haven't released it yet, but I did question Matt Gaetz yesterday about Epstein, and he sort of ignored me. Today, Steve Bannon was there, and I was trying to talk to him about Epstein because he got all sorts of cheers. But it's interesting. One thing I will say is I'm not seeing any conversation around Epstein. For all the talk online at this particular CPAC conservative crowd, which there are definitely young people there, but it seems to be mostly boomer kind of middle-aged folks, and nothing against them, just it is what it is. And it seems like they're not tuned in, or they're choosing to ignore the Epstein, scandal and sort of Trump's administration's role in trying to cover that up. But I do have a few other people on my list that hopefully tomorrow, when I go back for the final day, I'll be able to question and put out some more videos.
Yeah. The whole Epstein thing, it makes me so angry watching MAGA just completely roll over on this and make excuses and justifications. And it's just so pathetic. Honestly, it's pathetic. Like, this was a big deal to you. Like, this was a huge deal to MAGA. Like, they were, this was the thing. Like, they were so riled up about the Epstein files. And then the second that Trump started saying that it's a hoax, they immediately started changing their tune. And it is just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's pathetic.
It is.
It really is. It's crazy.
It's embarrassing to see grown adults, or even like listening to Mr. Bovino there, and just, kiss ass to Trump about he's the greatest. And it's like, do you not have any of your own self-worth? Or I don't know. It's just weird it's not my nature to kind of grovel at another person. Like, I see myself as an equal to other people, no matter how many followers you got or how big a celebrity you are. You're just a person. So it's odd to me when I see people do that, but it's especially odd when it's politicians and politicians who are lying to their face, no less.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a political opportunist, and I think that these are the types of people who they don't do anything unless it is advantageous to themselves, and kissing Trump's ass is to his benefit, and that's why he's doing it. And it's just weak and pathetic, and the way that they've just completely capitulated on Epstein is really depressing. Okay, so since you're at CPAC though, and again, if you're just joining us, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm your guest host for today, Misty Winston. I'm joined by Derrick Broze, who is currently at CPAC. He's attempting to interview and confront several different people there while he's there. But this video did come out today, and it was really funny. It's Trump. Okay, I'm just gonna let you watch it, and then we'll talk about it.
Many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? No. That was the wrong answer. Let me try it again. How many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? No. Can someone bring some coffee out for the people of CPAC?
I know.
We've got to keep this House majority. How many of you agree with that?
It's so awkward. That was so awkward.
Wow.
Like, they literally cheered impeachment hearings back to back.
I saw a few awkward things like that. I was in the room actually for that one, and it's interesting because I've noticed a few of the speakers, including that gentleman there who's the head of CPAC, having to kind of like pump up the crowd. And again, maybe it's because there's less people there than they typically expect. Like, come on, I can't hear you. Like, make some noise, or just trying to like amp up the energy. I will say that Bannon probably had the biggest crowd that I've seen there. Or yesterday, Nick Shirley, that young YouTuber was there, and a bunch of people were all, pumped over him. But other than that, it's been awkward to see that kind of thing. I hadn't really known that the clip was out there already, but there's definitely some interesting energy. One talk that I will say that I'll give credit to, I don't really follow this guy. I think his name's Brandon Straka, the Walkaway Movement. This guy he got a lot of attention, like a lot of folks, for switching sides. Let's say he used to be a Democrat, and then he kind of woke up. This is his story. He's like, I woke up, the radical left, woke, blah, blah. And then I joined, the Trump movement. And so he started the Walkaway movement. And his speech, though, was interesting because he was one of a couple people saying, look, don't make me walk away from the Republican movement now, because now it seems like we have to all have the same opinion, and we can't have differences of opinion about Iran or about Israel. And so it was interesting, because I don't know where he falls in these issues, but he was saying when he was attacked by the left that two of the people that were supportive of him were Mark Levin and Tucker Carlson. And he's like, but now I'm being asked to choose between which of these gentlemen I should follow. And if I follow this one, then I'm a radical Zionist. And if I follow this one, I don't particularly trust either of the people he mentioned. But I just thought that it was interesting that it was being mentioned that, hey, we shouldn't necessarily all have to agree on everything to be a part of this coalition, because I think that is a lot of what CPAC is trying to push right now, from what I could see, which is we need to beat the Democrats in the midterms. So stop, debating Trump's policies or who cares about Iran or this and that. Like, we need to stick together, which is just the same thing that Democrats and all the politicians have always tried to do, is don't be a principled person. Don't challenge things. Don't rock the boat. Or if you do so, do it after the election. Then you could, have principles and values and stuff like that. But for right now, we need to be a unified front. And again, I mean, just to what I was sharing earlier, this is why I think politics has failed, because it expects people to give up any principles that they might hold. And in fact, maybe this gentleman, Brendan Straka, was saying, like, I left the left, or the left left me, however you want to think about that, because the principles I held that I thought they believed in were no longer relevant. And now I found my new home over here. But it kind of seemed like now he's starting to rethink that, of like, okay, now you guys are just turning into the mirror image of the same thing that I thought I was getting away from. That's politics for you, though, is that both sides are going to expect you to have loyalty and to not be a critical thinker, to not question, to not challenge. And you got to back the candidate, whether it's Biden, whether it's Trump, whether it's Clinton, whatever. That is how they play the game. And so I'm just really hoping that so many people, especially in this audience here, who woke up to the left during COVID and Biden and the Democrats, or however you want to term that, because I know the left Democrats aren't really left, but that general blob.
Right.
If you woke up to what they're doing, and then you went to Trump and the RFK coalition and Tulsi and all this stuff, thinking that it was something different. Hopefully now you don't think the answer is just to go back to the other side, because I see people posting that. It's like, we got to make sure the Republicans lose now because we have to stick it to them because they're breaking so many promises. Well, the system and the people who run the system, the oligarchs, the people behind the pyramid of power, they don't care if you vote for either of those parties. It's not going to hurt them any if you just rush back to the other side and let that pendulum swing back to the other way, where all of a sudden people think the populist movement is now going to be within the Democrat Party or something like that. Or even thinking that staying faithful to Trump and the Republican Party, that you're somehow going to get what you think you're getting for. I mean, I think we're seeing all over the spectrum the amount of promises that have been broken by Trump and his different cabinet appointments. That if any of them had spine, not that I necessarily believe or trust Joe Kent either. I mean, I just don't trust any of these people. But if any of them did have a spine, they would be resigning themselves as well. They would have been resigning long ago. You would see Kennedy resigning when the glyphosate executive order happened. You would see Tulsi resigning for the Iran war. All these sort of things. But the fact that these people stay silent, to me, silence, it really is compliance in this case, because some people say, well, they're just trying to navigate, you don't understand politics. This is how they have to play the game, either because they're trying to think of their political career in the future, which is like, okay, so if they just care about their own political career and not the principles that they told you they were running on in the first place, or that they were supporting. What is the point, And so I just really hope we don't see the same thing back and forth. Okay, it's the midterms. Let's punish the Republicans by voting for the Democrats, and then we're going to see what they do. And then, it's just, people need to really understand. And again, it is something that can be overwhelming, but these oligarchs, these families, these institutions have control of both sides of the system. The technocrats do. Trump is working hand in glove with the technocrats, with the Peter Thiels and the Alex Karps and the David Sachs and the Howard Lutnicks and all these different folks. And there, as I've been reporting at The Last American Vagabond for a couple of years now, I mean, numerous people in Trump's cabinet are either steering committee members like Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, who many of his people work for or have worked for in the past, are members of the Bilderberg Group or attendees of the Bilderberg Group or members of the Council on Foreign Relations or the World Economic Forum. The groups that you thought you were fighting, those are the same people that are working with Trump in his cabinet and as advisors. And so we just really need to recognize that this isn't the answer. So needless to say, for me at CPAC, it's been a little frustrating. I'm doing my best to just keep my non-biased journalist hat on and not scream and shout at all this stuff, but it is challenging.
Yeah. Well, and I think that people like that though. The Brandon, what's his last name? Straka?
Yeah.
Whatever. I feel like those types of people, they're just so close to getting it. You know what I mean? Like and that's why, like we were talking about earlier, it's important to try to remain patient with people because, I mean, there was a time, I never really bought into electoral politics. I have voted before. I blame Dennis Kucinich, really. I'm an Ohio girl, and he was kind of the first person that made me think maybe we can vote some stuff. But I feel like we all have like our own journey. Like we all have those moments where things start to we start to realize that things aren't what they seem, and that everything that we've ever been told is inaccurate, and that all of those things I think are very overwhelming for people. And I think it's important to try, and you're much better at that than I am. Like, you're very patient with people. I am not. Like, you did a whole ass debate with Naomi Wolf, and I could barely even sit through it. It was painful. I don't know how you did that. I don't have that in me, Derrick. I don't. I have no zen whatsoever when it comes to that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just think it's important to try to remain patient with people. And I feel like people like that, they're so close to getting it. Like, they really are just so close to getting it. And once you realize that you can't vote your way out of this, I think a lot of things become much more clear. So hopefully, and I think honestly, I genuinely do, and this is very uncharacteristic of me to be hopeful. I do think that in recent years, we have seen an explosion of people who seem to understand that. Is that going to be enough? I don't know. But I do think that there is a noticeable and significant shift in public consciousness. I really do think that more and more people get it. You know what I'm saying? So
I do agree. And I'm with you on like the sort of trying to balance the optimism with the cynicism, right? I don't have any hopium that like we're gonna get everything, right in the next couple of years. But I do agree that for example, the Epstein files and just there seems to be a lot more resistance to the war on Iran this time. Like I try to temper my own like, oh my God, I can't believe things are heading this direction, with a little bit of optimism without falling into, starry-eyed blind optimism. But I am hopeful. I really do think this midterms and then, of course, the next presidential election will be a test of that, right? Because it seems like, in my experience, everybody's waking up in between the elections because people fall for it. And then they're like, oh my God, we got played again. We're all awake. We're like, screw the system, this and that. But then inevitably, it's the most important election of your lifetime again. And everybody goes back and does the same thing again. So that's where my frustration, my challenge comes in, is like, I don't want to watch good, well-meaning, well-intentioned people play this game for the rest of our lives. Because I voted one time in my life. I was 18 years old. I was fresh out of high school when we started dropping bombs. The U.S. started dropping bombs on Iraq, and I hated Bush. I was in a punk band that was anti-Bush. We used to take a life-size Bush thing on stage and rip his head off and throw him into the crowd. I hated Bush so much. I was like, well, and this is the beginning of my, I guess, political awakening. Well, if Bush isn't going to save us, then obviously the other side, the other team is going to save us, right? So I went and voted for John Kerry, which is apparently his cousin, potentially. So that was the one time I voted. And it didn't take me long after that, watching people get enamored by Obama and then him break all his promises, and just to realize, like, okay, we can't trust these people. So I'm hopeful that this is that moment for more and more people, that because this huge coalition of people, from the health freedom people, from the libertarians and the Bitcoin people and all these different sectors, that for whatever, I really tend to not trust any of the election drama we see in front of our eyes. I think most of it is scripted to some degree, not to say that everything, every single moment, but for whatever it's worth, they did pull together a coalition of people who believed that by backing Trump, their single issue was going to get supported. The Maha people, libertarians, all the different groups. And for the most part, all those groups have been disappointed and have been lied to, and promises have been broken. My hope now is that they're going to take that dissatisfaction and then start pursuing apolitical solutions like what I talk about with exit and bills, or at the least not fall for yet another false promise and at the next election. That's where I'm hoping things are going. So I guess we're going to see where things go in the coming months. But I'm going to try to hold on to as much optimism as I can, and at the same time, just keep trying to remind people that we can't trust these people.
Yeah, it's a daily battle. Genuinely, it's a daily battle trying to remain optimistic, and they're really good at manufacturing. I think that that's something that we need to learn to overcome. Like all of us have a lot of things in common, and then we're willing to throw all of those commonalities away because we have a disagreement over something relatively trivial. And we really need to stop doing that. It's really, really, really frustrating. Okay. So I did want to also bring up, you just posted this. You are going to be doing your first leg of the US activation tour. So here are the dates. I'm sure you're going to have more information as time goes on. Where can people find, is this on Pyramid of Power? Is this on, I'm sure it's on all of the things, right?
So thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that. So
Yeah,
my main website is theconsciousresistance.com for people who want to keep up with my regular weekly reports. That'll be a good place to check out this. I do have a separate website, but I've got too many websites to just focus on the conscious resistance right now. And so this is, I periodically, this will be my 5th tour that I've done since 2017. I've done 3 US tours and 1 tour across Mexico. And the last time I toured was spring of 2021 and the height of the COVID 1984 insanity. And, I don't just go out on the road and travel just to hear myself speak. The whole idea with this is to get out and try to, as the title implies, to get people activated, motivated, inspired. Like, what can we really do? As the description says there, I mean, we're facing, it's not COVID anymore right now, but we're facing, a war. We're facing the increase of the technocracy and militarization and surveillance and talk of food prices rising and gas prices rising. I think it's another important time for Americans to be thinking about what are we going to do to take care of ourselves. And again, with everything I just said, I don't believe that politicians are the answer. So I'm going to be doing a full U.S. tour. This is just the first leg. We'll be doing that's basically Southwest, West Coast, and Northwest in May. And then in July, I'll be going to the Midwest and East Coast and down to Florida and back to Texas. So I hope to meet more people in person. These events are, I give a presentation. There's going to be some musical acts at most of the stops as well, and just a lot of networking and community. So if you're the kind of person who watches shows like Jimmy's or tunes into this type of content, but you don't really know anybody in your own backyard, and you happen to see that I'm coming anywhere near you, I encourage you to come, because it's always a great time just to get connected. Like I said, I'll have a message to share. I'll have my books and shirts and all that kind of stuff. But most importantly, when I come to cities like this, I want to get people connected and activated in their own backyard. And the other thing is, every single stop that we come to, besides that, what I just described in the evening, we also have some type of like volunteer, we call it an action day. So sometimes we're doing a few hours at a community garden. Sometimes we're doing homeless outreach. Sometimes we're doing a park or a beach cleanup, but it's something to sort of contribute and give back to all the communities that I'm visiting. And so, yeah, if people want to know more about that, just follow me on Twitter or go to theconsciousresistance.com. I just announced that yesterday. So in the coming days and weeks, I'll be announcing the venues and all those details.
Yeah. And again, I think that this is, I was talking about it earlier with Jimmy Dore shows. Like, it's so important, especially right now. I feel like to get in a room or get in a space with other people, like-minded individuals, because it does. I mean, we're talking about, having a loss of hope and black pill and all of that stuff. It's really easy to lose hope right now. Like, there's a lot of really terrible stuff going on, and we're bombarded with that information daily. Like, again, watching a genocide being live streamed to your little magical device every day is endlessly depressing. So I think it's when we're being bombarded with all that negativity, being able to be in a space with other people who get it and who understand it and who also want to do things that can help us get out of it. I think that that's really just a good morale boost. I think we all need it these days. So yeah, I look forward to you coming to the Midwest. I'm in Ohio, so if you come to Ohio, let me know.
We might be coming to Columbus, so I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted.
I'm 20 minutes outside of Columbus, so that's perfect for me. Okay, Derrick, is there anything else that you have going on? Do you have any other? I'm asking you if you have anything else going on, a documentary, a book, you're at CPAC, you're doing an activation tour. Anything else, Derrick?
I appreciate you hearing me on. That's pretty much it. Again, everybody, if you want to find the Pyramid of Power, go to thepyramidofpower.net. You can find all the episodes and everything I mentioned, the solutions tab, the book. If you want to check out my memoir, it's amanofmyword.com. My main website is theconsciousresistance.com. And of course, I write weekly articles for thelast.americanvagabond.com with Ryan.
Okay, guys, there you go. There's all the things, the conscious resistance, the book, the Twitter, all of the things, the activation tour. Make sure you follow Derrick and check out his work and support his work. Share his work. That's another big thing, especially in the terms of algorithmic, the time of algorithmic suppression. Please share the work. That is very helpful. So Derrick, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate you as always. And everybody, if you just want to hang out, I think we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back with our next guest.
Thank you.
Everyone, we are moving to Rumble. I have put the link in the YouTube chat. It's pinned. So we'll take all your chats over there. We'll take the YouTube chats as well as Rumble rants. So we'll see you over there. Okay. Bye.